Welcome to the Autosportradio.com show. We are coming to you from Green Street Pub and Eatery at 911 North Green Street in Brownsburg. This program is being presented by the Indy Dental Group. Indy 500 veteran Dr. Jack Miller and his wife Dr. Liz Lewis have a phenomenal practice. They're now up to 6 offices. If you need dental work, you think you haven't had any check lately, you need to check them out. Give them a call, make an appointment. The number is 317-846-6125. Their main office is at 92nd and Meridian. It's easy to get to off the interstate. If you need dental work or you haven't had a check them out. Need insurance? VP Insurance is the place to go. They're located at 5004 West 16th Street, about a mile straight west of the Speedway. You can talk to Mike Pardee or Tom, find out what you need, they'll help you out. And I've been with them for over 30 years, and every time I check, like the insurance commissioner says, they're the best. Give them a call, the number is 317-248-0070. SVRA, what a phenomenal organization it is. They got the F3 and the F4 series now, run by Scott Goodyear. They have brought back the Trans Am series to bigger than what it used to be. It's phenomenal. Want to find out where they're performing or what events are? Go to svra.com and you'll be glad you did. They got sports cars, vintage sports cars. They got the Trans Am. They got the F3 and the F4. They got a full weekend when you go see them. My guests tonight are representatives of and have one of the Lucas Oil Indianapolis Raceway Park. How did you do? Well, I'll get to that in a minute. Sitting next to me is the general manager and NHRA vice president, and he oversees what happens not only in Indianapolis but Gainesville and Atlanta. And he has done a heck of a job. I tore down the park tower. I'm interested to see what they're going to do with that, because there's a Yingling beer truck right where it could be, so I might try and get a job. But anyway, please welcome Mr. Kasey Coler. Sitting next to Kasey is a young man who has spent his career in 4 wheels. Not all the same, but he runs everything, has run everything, he's won about it and everything. And he's from the Northeast, and I'm kind of curious as to how motorsports is big in Massachusetts, but one of the best on the short tracks, Mr. Bobby Santos III. And on the end of the table is a 2-time funny car world champion. He is won 48 out of 76 finals that he ran in while driving, and now he's in the booth where they have the shrimp cocktails, ice water and everything you need. But he's a heck of a broadcaster, and when you watch the sport, if you don't understand what it is, he'll tell you. He'll explain what he's saying and what it means. Please welcome Tony Pedregon. Start with you, Kasey. You tore the park tower down. You're going to replace it. When? It hadn't even started yet.
You're the 10th person that's asked me that in the past probably hour and a half, Don.
I'm sorry.
No, it's no, very true. So obviously the Indianapolis Raceway Park is we're starting we're on phase 1 of kind of a multi-year renovation of the facility. So one of those, the first piece that is that Parks Tower. The Parks Tower that we tore down was built in 1984. And it certainly had seen better days, was not ADA compliant. The cost to renovate that type of building has grown exponentially over the past probably 3 to 4 years. And so as we looked at it, we said, what is the next phase for the facility and that tower? So we're going out to bid in the next 30 days. We will have shovels in the ground probably starting June 1st. And we will have a completion date of June 1st of 2025. So this year we're working with a temporary tower that hopefully is in place by the end of this week. We've got racing starting in about a week and a half out there. But that will be the first phase. Then from there, the long-term plan, and I think I've shared with some folks, is we look at, you think about Brownsburg, you think about where the Ronald Reagan Parkway is, the new beautiful boulevard that the town of Brownsburg put in about a year and a half ago. That's going to be the new front door to Lucas Oil Indianapolis Raceway Park. That will be, that west side of our property will be actually where we park for most of our events, even the U.S. Nationals long term, not this year, probably not even next year. We have a ditch that runs right through the property today. That's a county ditch called Brown's Ditch. It's been there forever. We're looking at how do we remove, or not even remove it, but move that over to the west side of the property that allows us to really make that whole west corridor of Lucas Oil Indianapolis Raceway Park kind of the home of all of our activities. So that will be the main entrance. That's where our ticketing will be. That's where our nitro teams will be parked for the U.S. Nationals. So a lot of moving parts and pieces, but the tower is kind of phase number one.
Well, you have also expanded the staff. Somebody must have decided that Governor Newsom could go fly a kite and they moved him here. Smart move, it would seem to me. It's a lot cheaper here. But you moved quite a number of people to come from California here.
We have. So the NHRA based in San Dimas, California today, we still have about 80 colleagues that are still out there. Really what we've done, and we just added, we renovated our offices. We added 30 new working spaces at the end of this past year. It's full already. If you drive by our parking lot today, it's tough to find a parking space, which is funny because this is my 8th year with the NHRA. I think first year I started, there were probably 3 cars in the parking lot. But really, as positions open up there, we choose to fill those in Indianapolis. But we've also moved some other pieces of our business here to Indy. This past weekend, Tony could probably even talk about it. We had 5 folks that were based right there on the property, helping contribute to the television broadcast, from producers, graphics operators, those sorts of folks that are literally in Indianapolis while we're running a whole broadcast out of Los Angeles, California. Pretty cool. So more opportunities like that.
And you've got a pretty full season this year, not only with NHRA, and I keep saying that the U.S. Nationals is the biggest single drag race in the world.
It is.
Where else do they race like they do in America?
So we kicked off 2.5 weeks ago in Gainesville, Florida. If anybody's ever been, if you love drag racing, Gainesville, the Gator Nationals, which for the past 2 years has been our kickoff of our season. It's not to the level of where the U.S. Nationals are in terms of attendance, but it's pretty darn close. It continues to grow for us. That is probably our second biggest event. When we get to California, we're still rebuilding those events there. But if you think about Norwalk, Ohio, they do a great job of packing the place. That's probably one of the top 3 or 4. And in Dallas, Texas, at the Motorplex, they've done a really nice job with their Stampede of Speed. So those events are really big to us. We just went back to Chicago this past year. That kind of falls to us, my team. We rent that facility from NASCAR. We go in there, we make sure it's beautiful, and we put on a great race, and we pack it back up, and we see the facility in a year from now. So we've got a lot of great races, but obviously the U.S. Nationals are our biggest.
Tony, 2-time world champion. What does Indianapolis mean to the series?
Well, logistically, this has always been the center of motorsports. I think Charlotte has offered to challenge that, but it's still Indianapolis. The Brickyard is here and all that history, but the history at RRP, I don't think people realize that, with drag racing, and of course we air a lot of those highlights on the show, but there were so many iconic moments at the U.S. Nationals. Don Garlitz, when he didn't want to shave until he won a race, and he was in the winner's circle and he shaved his beard. And you can go back in the history of our sport, with Don Perdome and Shirley Muldowney and Chris the Greek, Karamessinis, and a lot of the legends. There were so many big moments at this facility, and I think for a long time it was a little overshadowed by the Brickyard. But I think that as the NHRA have continued to really sink their teeth and their roots into this town, I think the other thing that's really changed the dynamic of our sport is all the teams that have set up shop here in Brownsburg. And again, some of them were based in California. I think they were sprinkled out all over the United States. But logistically, and it was probably because of IndyCar originally, they had access to the machinists, You know, of course now it's carbon fiber, it's not fiberglass, but I think that was part of the appeal. And then it became cost and, you know, logistically, because we still go to the West Coast, we're up in the Northeast and we're in Florida, but I think the majority of the races are still, they're better access from Indianapolis. I know myself as a former racer and a former team owner, I lived in California, I was born and raised there. And when I started my own team, there wasn't any question that Indianapolis was where you really needed to be. You don't want to, it's tough to do business in California. You have workman's comp, you have the cost of living for, you know, a 10 to 12 person crew. So when you start looking at all of those variables, Indianapolis is the place. And I think the sport of NHRA and the sport of drag racing has done a lot for this, what was once a small town of Brownsburg.
No question about that. Your dad was known as Flamin' Frank. And obviously, the three sons said, well, it's better working at McDonald's or Dairy Queen. What got you guys interested in saying, we got to do this?
There are never any guarantees. You know, and I, through my racing career, you know, I spent a lot of time at, with some youth and education programs, and I've always given it to them straight. There's no question that when you're growing up, to surround yourself with, you know, with the right people, with good people. For us, in our case, we were obsessed with it. I'm sure you know, when you talk to Bobby and you dig into the backgrounds, you know, of a lot of us that somehow managed to make a living out of racing, it starts with the passion to do it. And I've run across a lot of people that say, I'd like to do it, how do you get started? And the only question that I have, the only single question that I think is the most important, and I have two boys, I tell them the same thing, whether it's boxing or racing or, you know, being a doctor, are you willing to put the time in? Because that's really what it takes. And it's different in, you know, some cases. Of course, in racing, you have to have ability and talent. It doesn't hurt to be able to, you know, to do an interview and speak well. The presentation is very important, but most of all, marketing. You know, I would recommend to anyone that's younger that would like to do it, you know, to take a business class. Marketing is right there adjacent to it. If you have a lot of money, you can go to the moon. You can go on a rocket with Elon Musk, but that wasn't the case for a lot of us. So I think there was a lot of things that had to fall in place. But more than anything, it takes years and years of commitment and sticking with it, even in some of those discouraging times when it doesn't seem like anything's really going to shake out. But I think that's what really separates the ones that make it from the ones that don't.
As a driver and a champion, do you miss being strapped in the seat with a helmet on and steering wheel in your hand?
That's the one thing I get asked the most, if I miss it. And the answer is yes, absolutely. I don't miss doing it the way I was trying to do it for the last 5 or 6 years that I raced. You know, when the recession hit in 2008, trying to get back on your feet in 2009, 10, and I involved myself with a lot of good companies and brought a few great brands to the sport, but they were never there at the same time. It was really fragmented. But I tried to stick with it, and I was trying to figure out how to continue to do it in 2015, and that's when Peter Clifford, with the NHRA, who heads up NHRA, came to my pit. And anytime I could bend their ear, whether it was Glenn Cromwell or Peter Clifford, I would always make suggestions on how they can fix the sport, so to speak. You know, slow the cars down, try to contain the cost. You know, I remember Peter came into my pit and I was trying to explain to him, you know, if you take 50% of this rear wing off, and most of the tuners aren't going to agree with it, but as a team owner, I always thought that would work. Take away some of the traction. That's going to force the tuners into a situation where they have to reduce the amount of clutch, they're going to have to reduce the amount of fuel volume. So there's certain things that you can do to the cars and make them make the correct adjustments. And he listened to all of it, and he was really smart, because anytime I would throw what I thought was a solution out there, he would ask me why, or how you fix it. And he left, and he came back 10 minutes later, and he says, "You ever thought of doing the TV show?" And I had never considered it, but after that, my wheels were turning. But you know, the economics, I think not just in racing, but for a lot of businesses, is always a challenge. And for me, I think the timing was right that, you know, this opportunity came along. But yes, I do miss racing. But I have an 18-year-old now that's been racing karts, and in fact, I introduced him to Bobby a couple of years ago because he loves pavement racing. Bobby gave him a few pointers, and he's in micros, and he'll be in some midgets later, hopefully in one of Cruz's midgets later in the year in a Chili Bowl. But when I go to the race with him, whether it's a kart race or when we were in Tulsa and they play the anthem, it's like I look at him and I think, man, that's me when I was 17, 18 years old. So I got to kind of live it through him now.
Well, that's a good idea. Did you ever think of buying him a set of golf clubs?
Oh yeah, I wanted to take the cheaper. I had him fishing poles and all that, couple of tennis rackets, and he just so happened to pick one of the most expensive things you can do.
Well, that happens, unfortunately. Sitting next to you is a gentleman you just mentioned that your son has gotten some tips from. It's Bobby Santos. Now, I asked you before we started, do you ever race motorcycles? You said you've never been on two wheels. Everything is four wheels. From Massachusetts, is racing big up there? How in the world did you get to where you are today from up there?
Actually, yeah, I feel like racing is pretty popular in New England. I come from, I'm a third generation racer. My grandfather was a modified racer in New England. All the Pintos and the kind of cars back in the 60s and 70s. My dad was a racer. He really couldn't do it quite to the level that he should have or been able to because he couldn't afford it. But he raced for many years, and then when my sister and I got old enough to race, they got us in quarter midgets. New England in general has a big history in modifieds. That's the big thing in New England is open wheel modifieds. And just my dad, brought me through the roots of New England racing. Started at Star Speedway in New Hampshire in a small block super modified. Got into NASCAR style modifieds and got introduced to the Seymour family in the early 2000s when I was racing midgets, and they kind of introduced me to this world out here of real open wheel racing, and obviously growing up watching IRP on TV as a kid, it was a dream to be able to come out to the Midwest and race out here, and just finally through the Seymours and a lot of effort from my dad. We got the opportunity to get to the Midwest and travel back and forth and race out here, which eventually turned into a full-time job working on race cars in Brownsburg, 10 minutes from one of my favorite racetracks in the country. So I feel pretty lucky that I'm racing, Silver Crown cars, sprint cars, midget cars, at IRP and all over the country.
Do you run the full USAC schedule?
Nope, I run the USAC Silver Crown car on the pavement. Then I run pavement midget and pavement sprint car wing and non-wing. That's the main things I'm doing right now. I run a super modified a little bit and still run the NASCAR modified and get as much opportunity to go home and see my family and race in New England as much as I can also.
Sure, you got to go home to see the family, but you got to be a race first.
Usually the visits usually are around a race for sure. There's a lot of great tracks in New England, Thompson, Connecticut, Stafford, Connecticut, Loud, New Hampshire. We have a lot of history in New England modified racing. It's definitely a tough competitive world of racing, which I feel has prepared me to be a successful Silver Crown sprint midget racer.
I was going to say, Don, if you look at our open wheel events, I wouldn't say 50%, but darn near 30 to 40% of the field is influenced by still the Northeast. We have a number of families that come out of the Northeast, as he's mentioned, the Seymours, the Bertrand family, the Zicks. There's a number of different folks that still come out here every year because their passion is for open wheel, pavement open wheel racing, and so we're fortunate that we have their support, and they're really the ones that are keeping a lot of this stuff alive as well.
What's your goal? Have you ever wanted to say, geez, 16th and Georgetown would be a pretty neat place?
That's the ultimate goal. I'd love to run the Indy 500. I feel that my style of driving and the way I race, I could be very successful in one of those type of cars. But obviously it's a very financially driven sport, and I understand that. So I'm not sure if that opportunity will ever come, but I know that if I got an opportunity to run an Indy car in an oval, I would do well. But I'm enjoying what I do right now. I mean, I have a great car owner in Dick and DJ Racing. I work on race cars and drive race cars for a living right now, which is the ultimate goal, and I'm going to try to keep doing it as long as I can, and as long as I can support my wife and my kids, I'm going to keep doing it.
Oh, sure, now you got to throw that in. Not over. Tony, something that crossed my mind. When they went from a quarter mile to 1,000 feet, everybody I talk to said, oh, that'll save engine parts, it'll save. I see them blowing up now in 1,000 feet, same as they did the quarter mile. Is there any advantage to the 1,000 foot? I mean, other than safety?
Well, there was initially, and it was a necessity to go to 1,000 feet when NHRA decided to do that. However, this is another common question that I'm asked, and I'm a proponent of quarter mile racing still. And I guess the best way that I could answer that question, or that I would answer that question, is you have to ask the right questions to the right people. As it relates to quarter mile, the answer is yes, these cars can run a quarter mile. You'll have to make some adjustments, because right now, when I quit racing, when we quit racing quarter mile, if I'm not mistaken, I think I won the last quarter mile race. That was in Norwalk, Ohio. And that was the same year that Scott Coletta had his accident. Rest in peace. And then we made the transition to 1,000 feet. That just required adjustment from some timers. And here we are, in the top speeds in a quarter of a mile were about 331, 332, maybe 333 miles per hour was the record. That was in a quarter of a mile. So now they're knocking on the door of 340 miles an hour in 1,000 feet. So the rate of acceleration is increased immensely. And that is due to evolution, better cylinder heads, better superchargers, more fuel, more volume, more of anything you could imagine. One of the concerns has always been the tire, the Goodyear tire. The Goodyear tire can sustain and withstand 340 mile per hour speeds. They've answered that question already. From a marketing perspective, I think it could be done in the future at very specific tracks. It's out of the question to ask any racers to run a quarter of a mile at the Pomona Fairplex, because that's a very short shutdown as it stands. So most cars need the additional 320 feet. But I think there are other tracks that, I think one of these days in the future, I don't think it's out of the question. Now, if you ask a team owner, most team owners rely on what their crew chief / tuner says. And if you ask a tuner, if you ask him to change anything, the answer is no, absolutely not, we can't do this. But I've been on every side of that coin. I was a hired driver, I was a team owner, I was an owner driver, and I had to figure out how to set my own car up and tune it. So from the perspective of a former team owner and driver, I think that when that question gets asked to a tuner, I think you're asking the wrong person. I think that you should ask the team owner. The tuners, again, I'll go back and say the tuners are going to make the adjustments. They're very smart. They understand what it is they're doing, but they really have a one-track mind when it comes to racing. They don't want you to tamper with their tune-up, because this is something that they've worked on for a year, or some of them even a few years, but it continually evolves. But when I say yes, I believe that these cars can compete in a quarter of a mile. I think that would be a great promotion for the sport in the future, but it is not, I wouldn't say yes without terms, because you do have to figure out the best way to slow the cars down so that they do not exceed 340 miles an hour in a quarter of a mile. But they do that now. These cars will run over 350 miles an hour. They're equipped with rev limiters. So there are electronics, there are tools and components on these cars, and they just require adjustments. So you have to ask the right questions to the right people.
I see. I can remember the day that Kenny Bernstein broke the 300 mile an hour. I can't remember I was there. I can't remember where
It was in Gainesville.
Yeah, okay, Gainesville. And I thought, boy, it can't go any better than this. And then I started thinking to myself, I was here at the Speedway in the early 60s when it was proven nobody could go over 150 miles an hour. It would not happen. Sure as hell did. And look at it now. They're going down the straightaways at 240, 245 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And you got to make a left turn at the Speedway. Some of you got to make a right turn, but you don't go that fast. But it's amazing what these guys, you put their mind to it, what they can do, the engineers and so, like in your cars. When you run a Silver Crown, those cars are fast. So are the sprint cars. You don't realize how fast they can go. You put them on a mile track and they're fast.
Yeah, I
You like
think
the speed?
Gateway last year, I think they're clocking us over 180 miles per hour at the end of the straightaway, which on a mile and a quarter is pretty insane for this form of race car.
Do you like the speed?
I personally enjoy the bigger tracks. The miles are my favorites. Winchester, a track like that, is probably not my favorite, but it's on the schedule, so I go there and try my hardest. But I prefer. It's funny because Gateway doesn't bother me, and the high-speed tracks like that don't bother me. But a track like Winchester, I definitely have a different appreciation for.
You know, it's a funny thing you're saying, not funny. The number of big-name Indy 500 winners wouldn't go there. It scared the hell out of them. I mean, a lot of guys said, no, I want to be part of that place. And I was there the day that Sarah Fisher set the all-time record. It didn't last very long, but she set the all-time record there. So I don't know what they're whimping about. She did it. Kasey, the events you have scheduled this year, now you've had some, I forget the name of the series that came in where the guys were a little cuckoo.
That really narrows it down, because I think that kind of each of the events that we have. Yeah, anybody that's got a helmet on is a little bit cuckoo sometimes.
Well, maybe.
But I think you're talking about Cletus and Cars when
Yeah.
they're coming out and doing burnouts and packing the place, and all types of, bedlam ensues. Yes, we'll have that back to start the month of May.
Oh, boy. But you got a full schedule this year, a little bit of everything.
We do. Yeah, we kick off here in 2 weeks. We start on the drag strip. We're doing kind of a fun event. It's a free kind of family event for the solar eclipse. Obviously, anybody that's in central Indiana has heard everything about that in terms of the eclipse happening. We're kind of playing our part from a drag racing facility. We're doing a free event as part of kind of with the town of Brownsburg, Parks and Rec, as well as Visit Hendricks. We're going to run a 5K in the early afternoon. You get to actually run down the drag strip before we put a bunch of glue on it. And then when it gets dark at 3 o'clock, we've got two front-engine dragsters, nostalgia front-engine dragsters. They're going to go down the track. We will have our lights on for that piece of it. And then we'll shut the lights off. Everybody gets to enjoy the solar eclipse for a few more minutes. And then everybody can kind of go on their way and probably sit in traffic for a couple of hours, it sounds like.
I understand most of the hotel rooms downtown are sold.
Yes, yeah, it sounds like that. I heard today, whoops, sorry, Bobby, 80% capacity right now in Hendricks County on hotels, and those rates,
Wow.
if you've checked your hotel rates, they're not just $50 a night around
No,
here.
not anymore.
They're like it's the Indy 500 weekend. But we'll have a full calendar. And the neat thing is we brought the Hoosier 100 back to life last year. Bobby won it, and so that will be Friday night of the 500 weekend. We'll run pavement midgets with that as well, and the USF championships. But we're really big on not only drag racing but also the pavement open wheel side of things.
Is there any chance that maybe Tony, when he's not busy in between telecasts, get the road course fixed up and running?
That's the question I get asked probably the most, outside of what are you going to do for a timing and scoring tower at the drag strip, is what about the road course? We've had some really interesting discussions over the past 6 months with some entities about a road course type facility. We'll see where those lead to. I can tell you we're probably never going to be able to resurrect the 2.5 mile road course that incorporates the drag strip. It's just the way that the property's laid out, and some of the things I shared earlier about what we're doing in the future. It's just not going to be able to kind of facilitate what we need from a road course perspective. But we have quite a bit of land that's still undeveloped on the property that we've looked at. I'd say chances are 50-50 right now, but if we have the right partner on that road course piece, I do see a future with a road course someday.
All right, well, I will look forward to you and the Silver Crown. That seems to be picking up. I mean, for a few years it was really low, and Davey Hamilton came in and got some guys to get the Silver Crown cars off the shelves. So they're getting good turnout. And of course, when you're out here running at IRP, you got to watch for Cody Swanson, and hopefully he's in your rearview mirror.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the plan this year. But no, the work that Kasey has put in at IRP, I mean, that's, in my opinion, has been a huge part at what's kept the Silver Crown division alive. I mean, we had some rough years there with Silver Crown Racing between the Gold Crown car and then the fuel deal when they switched fuel. And one constant was always going to IRP for the series, which was huge for the pavement side of it. And the last 3-4 years, we've really gained momentum with the Silver Crown cars. I mean, we got, I don't know exactly what we average, but we have 24 to 30 cars at every race we're going to right now. And, a big part of that is what he's doing at IRP. The Hoosier 100 turned out to be a great event last year, especially for me, but it worked out good for everybody. I think everyone was super excited about it. It just brought some history to that event, brought some different history, obviously, to that event, but just everything that they're doing at IRP, and then Silver Crown Racing in general, everywhere we're going right now, fans seem to be enjoying it, and the series is doing well.
Tony, what is it? Cruz runs a couple midgets down in Tulsa. Where are you? Are you up in the booth there?
I've been in the booth for 8 years, same year. I didn't realize that Kasey and I started at the same time. I miss racing, but I still enjoy it, and I enjoy working with the host, Brian Loans. He and I didn't realize it till we started the show on Sunday, but that was our 100th show, a race that we called together. And he's a true professional. He is very well prepared and understands and knows the history of the sport. So I enjoy it, and it's funny because the bottom line, when you're racing, the bottom line is winning and performing. And now it hasn't really changed much, but the only thing that really matters is the rating, is how many people tune in. So we're going to continue to try to improve the show, because I think as a former racer, I understand very well the challenge that the team owners have, and a lot of the talent that is out there that want to race. But again, if the economics have to be there. So I think it's a lot more appealing to sponsors when you can say, look, we drew in 1.5 million, this past weekend. Programming is very important when it comes to TV, and of course, when we can partner up with NASCAR, or during the summer when the NFL starts, we have a couple of lead-ins with some NFL games, and that tends to give us a much better opportunity to expose our sport to some new eyeballs. So, real quick, I read up on the eclipse, because I was concerned. I told Kasey I want to go there on Monday. I know my boys are going to go, and I thought, I'm flying back from Phoenix. I might be on a plane when the eclipse happens. I don't know if I wanted to do that, but I land like at 12:30, and I learned the darkness lasts for a few minutes. Yeah. But the opportunity, I think, there's some comets, there's some planets that we can never see with the naked eye that we'll be able to see, and that shadow is traveling at 1,600 miles an hour. So that's going to be a pretty neat event there at Kasey's place.
That's cool.
How much are you charging to get in to watch it?
It's free.
Oh,
Yeah,
my favorite
free.
word.
Yes, that's right. So it's
One of my
free.
favorite
Bring out the family, watch some cars go down the track, but also have some fun with a lot of activities going on.
I want to make one comment before we close this out. Tony, I try and watch all the NHRA events I can. I'm a good friend with Joe Barlow, so I like to.
Oh, yeah.
When I see him and he stumbles or something, I'll call up. Nice, looking good, but I enjoy listening to you because you explain something. As much as I've seen it in a number of races I've attended over the years, there's still stuff I don't totally understand, and you explain what you're talking about. You don't just leave the viewer saying, what the hell does that mean? You
Well, I
tell them.
appreciate that. That's one of the first things that they taught me. There's, of course, a little booklet, and I still have it after all these years. Don't talk about race. Don't talk about politics. I think there's 4 things that you stay away from, and I've never forgotten that. But most of all, they say if you say something, explain it. Do not assume that the viewer at home knows what you're talking about. And we get bashed a little bit, but I've learned that on a Friday or Saturday qualifying show, we have a slightly different audience. We tend to attract more of our core viewers, our hardcore fans, than what we would on Sunday. But you know, when you're doing any kind of TV show, you're not going to make everybody happy all the time. And the goal for me is to do whatever we can to produce a good show, and again, to try to draw in more viewers and make it interesting for anyone that follows our sport.
As far as I'm concerned, a race is nut. I'm still following racing. I should quit a long time ago, but I still enjoy it, and I still enjoy the people involved in it. I've said many, many times, of all the athletes that you read about, and all the problems they have and things that they do, you don't see that in racing. I only know 3 guys that got in trouble for it. 2 brothers who went to jail, and one who followed his father, and he went to jail. But otherwise, racing, I think, is a good, clean sport. And the interesting thing, when I first started, I go to the short tracks, and during a race, something go on, and afterwards, 2 guys are in the parking lot with 2x4s after each other. You go to the motel at night, and they're trading parts and go race again tomorrow. So what was that about? That's over with. Well, I want to thank you guys for taking the time to come here. My other guest is sitting here, and I don't want her to fall asleep before we get to her. I want to thank Kasey Coler, the NHRA Vice President and General Manager of IRP, and I think you're doing a heck of a job there with
Appreciate that.
putting everything together. Bobby Santos, keep winning, so you can take care of the family in case you got a youngster that thinks about racing, obviously a golf club or a tennis racket or something.
Basketball.
Or basketball. Is he gonna be bigger than you?
Hopefully.
You better be.
Tony Pedregon, what can I say? I enjoyed watching your race. I think I saw you win one of your 2 world championships, and if I'm not mistaken, you beat out John Ford driving for him.
Yeah, one of these days I'm going to write a book, and when I tell Forrest this, he kind of gives me a look like, "Are you serious?" And I just have a smirk on my face. But try being a hired driver. You think it's tough to win a championship? Try beating the guy that signs your paycheck, that has the A car, so to speak. So I beat the odds that one year, and I thought it was a good time to get out. But Don, none of us are getting any younger, and you're as sharp as ever. Appreciate you having us on.
Thanks for being here. Thanks, and talk to you again. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thank
Bobby,
you.
thanks for coming.
Thank you. Hello.
Try using this mic. And let her use this one.
I'm by myself now.
Why do I need somebody else with you? We're close.
This is yours.
Am I sitting right next to you?
You can. I mean, I won't picture
Don't let it rub off on you.
All right, my next guest is somebody we have bonded without question. I've talked to her 2 or 3 times on the phone, and we've exchanged texts a couple of times. And I've heard nothing but good things about her. She is, you would think, a model or something. She's a race car driver. We're going to find out why She is driving race cars. Please welcome from Iowa, McKenna Haase. What put you behind the wheel of a race car? Were you a cheerleader in high school or grade school?
No, definitely not. I met Kasey Kane when I was in a shopping mall when I was a kid. He was there signing autographs. I was there having dinner, and he thought I came to get his autograph and didn't get one. So we got to talking, and he asked where I was from when I said Des Moines. He asked if I go to Knoxville Raceway a lot, and I never heard of Knoxville, so I started following Kasey, started following sprint car racing, and that's kind of what started it. And then basically got the chance to drive somebody else's car when I was 12 and did pretty good, and saved up my money, started my team when I was 13, and then been obviously running the same team 14 years, and now I'm racing 410 wing sprint cars, and then I came to Indianapolis 4 years ago to kind of further that career.
You have a sponsor that is heavily into racing, and that's from Des Moines area, and I'm told that you sold your program to them.
Yeah, so Hy-Vee came on board, I think 3 years ago now. This will be our third year together, and when they got into IndyCar, they kind of reached out to me about doing a promotion with the Indy 500, and ironically enough, like, I'm from Des Moines and raced there all those years and never had a sponsorship with them, but then moved here and they get into IndyCar, and that's kind of what sparked it. So I talked about doing a formal deal with them, and it took about 6 months, but finally we were able to sign them, and so it's been a great partnership ever since, and I'm really excited to have them back on board this year. Well, I guess I haven't really said this yet, but we're switching the car to red for Hy-Vee, and so for the first time ever, it won't be pink and green, but excited to do that for them.
You have several sponsors, and it's my understanding, through my good friend Trevor over there, that the majority of your sponsorship has come through your efforts.
Yeah, basically, when I got into racing, my parents said that, well, they didn't even say if you want to do that, you have to figure out a way. They just were like, you're not doing that at all. And I kind of came up with a plan to save my money to race when I was somewhere between like 16 and 18. And then when I got behind the wheel of that other kid's car and did pretty good, I kind of had to think on my feet with how to come up with the money. So just started learning how to sell sponsorship. I just started out locally. It was just like $100 here, $300 there. And then when I started like racing and started winning. And then when I was 17, the CEO of Casey's General Stores came and talked to me and asked if I would want to talk further. And so I asked if I could pitch them. And when I was 17, I went to Casey's headquarters and pitched to the CEO and the CMO and signed Casey's that year, and then started getting some other corporate sponsors like Steinseed and some others, just networking, like friends that would connect me with people, and it just kind of spiraled from there. So yeah, for 14 years we've been fully funded through sponsorship by the grace of God, and we've had a great fan base too, just with t-shirt sales and everything else, but without sponsors and fans, like literally I couldn't race at all. And so it's definitely a big part of our team, and we have to just be really careful with how we budget that. We're not racing 100 races a year like some of our competitors, but we do the best we can with what we have, and we're grateful for everybody who makes it possible.
What's your favorite track? And you run almost strictly dirt.
We do. Obviously Knoxville is like what I'm known for, so I do love Knoxville for just what it's meant to me. But Eldora's come to mean a lot too, just because I feel like since moving to Indy, it feels kind of like my new home track, I guess. And so I do enjoy Eldora and Knoxville both. I do like the big tracks, but I would say Burlington is probably my favorite short track.
You run wing and non-wing, or strictly wing?
Strictly wing, yes.
Have you any aspirations to do something else, to get out of dirt and run pavement and maybe move to end up at 16th in Georgetown?
I would love to race there. We've looked into it before. It's just, actually Kasey and I spent some time talking to some teams in the past, and he's taken me around and whatnot, but it's just been so hard just with, unless you're just a hired driver, it's hard for me to take the time to come up with the funding for two different forms of racing. But when I was a little bit younger, I had some opportunities to run some stock late models, and pro late models on asphalt. So I did a little bit of that throughout the country, and then I did some dirt midget stuff and things like that. But I've never, I've spotted Silver Crown quite a bit, which is painful because you wish you were out there. So spotting definitely makes me wish that I could do at least like even the Silver Crown stuff on dirt. They say they drive kind of more like a wing car, so I think that would be really cool to at least do, especially being based here.
What brought you here from Iowa? I mean, geez, you're out in the country and you got Knoxville nearby. Why did you come to Indianapolis?
Yeah, so in 2018 we had a pretty successful season at Knoxville, and then I went to Australia and raced 410 for the first time and fell in love with 410, so wanted to move up to that when I came back to America, so that's what we did. But in the meantime, I really wanted to race midgets just because I feel like that was kind of the thing. Like I wanted to race NASCAR, and I felt like that's where a lot of NASCAR teams were looking. So I tried coming here to race midgets, and then unfortunately lost my opportunity before before the season even started. Just some things changed with that, and so I basically had turned down everything at Knoxville. I had a sponsorship opportunity to run for the 360 championship, and basically turned it down and turned down everything else back home to come out here. And then I lost my deal in February, so it's kind of like I was left with nothing. And I was a finance major in Des Moines at a pretty good university, and I dropped out of college, like the whole thing. And so I just was like, I didn't know what to do. So I bought a one-way plane ticket to Indianapolis and just said like I'm not buying a return flight until I have another opportunity. So that's what I did. I spent about 2 weeks here banging down doors and solidified a plan, and then bought a rental car, drove back to Des Moines, packed up everything I had, and left the only home I'd known for 22 years to come here. So I actually came to Brownsburg and didn't have a place to live, but the IndyCar chaplain, who lives just right in the middle of town, he took me in for a month and just kind of did the classic race car driver couch hopping story until I kind of got settled, and eventually got an opportunity with a 410 team here and did that, and then branched off and started my team here. So now we have our shop here with the 410 wing stuff, and then found a house and the whole thing. So
Obviously you've done well, coming here with nothing, a one-way ticket, and just in case. What did Mom and Dad say when you jumped on the plane? Goodbye, have a nice time?
they my dad handled it better than I thought. My mom was not super happy. She had big aspirations for me in the finance world and all that, but I mean, I don't know. I followed God's plan, and so far it's worked out okay. So.
Well, you got to say it one thing. The finance classes you attended, obviously you caught on quickly.
Yeah, it really does cross over to racing. I actually wish that there was more kind of people from the business world that had a larger influence on the motorsports world, because obviously it's a big part of what we do. I feel like we have a little bit of a lack of education in that way coming up through our sport, so that's one of the things my foundation does with kids, is like we try to educate them on being able to apply those kinds of skills to the industry, because as a team owner, like our team wouldn't be alive if I hadn't learned those skills.
Well, things have changed today, and I think it's also true of the short tracks where you are, that it's no longer having your name on a car. There's networking, and there's other companies that hopefully in the paddock that they can get together and build business relationships, which is the whole secret to this today, I think. And I am assuming you are aware of that, and try and get Hy-Vee to bring some lunches out, or give out coupons for discounts in their stores. And speaking of them, they were talking about building a store here, and all of a sudden it died off. I haven't heard a peep. They had some guy here scouting.
Yep.
Are they still looking?
Yeah, they are. I don't know if I'm supposed to share this, but I'm pretty sure it's in the newspapers. So, but basically, they bought 2 properties here. One's in Fishers, one's in Whitestown. And then basically, with just like a lot of the fluctuations with construction and pricing and stuff like that, they kind of held off on building. And then the last I heard was that they just felt like they needed to reevaluate what type of, like what size of store that they're going to build. So they were supposed to be done by now, and so I was really looking forward to this season, having the grand opening and like having our car on display. But yeah, it's looking like it's going to be a little bit more delayed, which is kind of a bummer, but hopefully it happens soon.
Quite a place, I know. When we go back to see my kids over in Illinois. That's where we go shopping when we're
Yeah.
in Hy-Vee store. Have you, your aspiration, as you said, but if in NASCAR, when Kasey came, you ought to be able to help him a lot. Has he tried to get you to get into a NASCAR?
I've definitely had some NASCAR drivers help a lot in that way. I feel like right now my focus, especially over the next 3 years, is at least being really competitive in 410. Like I feel like we had some good results in 305 and 360, but in 410, like I would really like to, like only 6 drivers in Knoxville history have won in all 3 divisions, so I would like to do that. And I think if we can be successful at like the Kings Royal, Knoxville National, some of those races, I think it would be more justifiable, to transfer to something else. But for now, I feel like we need to focus on being successful where we're at and then kind of seeing where that takes us.
That makes sense. You started very early. It's kind of a surprise to hear that. But on the other hand, I don't know, do you know Kaylee Bryson?
Mm-hmm.
She's still younger than you.
Yeah.
And has done well in Silver Crown. She was 5th in points and Rookie of the Year in Silver Crown last year. She's now driving Trans Am cars in the SVRA series. Does that kind of thing interest you, getting it, say, run the Trans Am? If somebody said, hey, we got a Trans Am car, come and take a run.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely drive anything, especially if it's a higher deal for sure. I've done some like sports car stuff a little bit, so I feel like I've had some experience with that. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is like it's hard, for me personally at least, I can't speak for everybody, but this is a hard sport to be in without having family or having lineage, I mean, I feel like that's just a big part of it is connections and being able to have like, a dad or a grandpa or somebody that maybe has those types of, not just connections, because I feel like I have good connections, but like the leverage to, to really seal the deal, I guess, is really challenging. And so, yeah, I mean, I constantly like fight for whatever opportunities we can get, but I feel like 410 wing sprint car racing is on the rise right now. I feel like it's super competitive, and with high limit coming up and everything like that, I feel like there is a lot of eyeballs on it, and so I'm really hoping that that'll help kind of elevate what we're doing.
You realize you do have connection. Sitting over at that table, he knows everything.
He's a great guy.
Oh, he's wonderful.
Yeah, he is.
And in case you can't communicate, he can help you with that too.
Yeah.
He's for Verizon.
That's true.
So he's got it covered for you.
Yeah, we love Trevor.
And then you can get him to come to the track and he can be your spotter.
He's been to the race shop. We've forced him to work on the cars, so
Really?
it's not his favorite thing to do, but yeah, he's pitched in.
While we were bonding, and I called you, and you said, "Can I call you back?" I said, "Sure." I said, "You in the middle of something?" "Yeah, you were doing something with bearings or whatever." I thought,
Yep.
"You're getting your hands dirty. You have how big a crew have you got?"
So I actually lost. So I've only ever had like one mechanic my whole career. For the first like 8 years of my sprint car career, we would have other guys at the track, but in terms of during the week, just like one guy. And then like mid-season 2021, I lost my crew chief. He's alive. I mean, like he had to like leave the team kind of just abruptly for some personal reasons, and just had some stuff going on in his personal life. So anyway, like we were kind of left with the choice of like in the heart of the season like that, it's hard to just turn right around and find somebody that's available. So we kind of just made it work, and then just with funding, like I felt like crew chiefs became extremely valuable in that time frame, and they also became kind of limited. And so I actually took on that role myself. So for the past 2 to 2.5 years, I've been the head mechanic. So we've had some guys that have. It took a while, but I found some guys to pitch in that have helped like part-time during the week and then at the track. But like last year, there was a lot of nights where it'd just be me and one other guy, and he basically just would do whatever I told him to do. Like I tune the motor, I do the shocks at the track, and then I call all the shots on the setup, and then he makes the changes. And then during the week, I'm in charge of all the maintenance, the inventory, the washing, like all that kind of stuff. So it's been a lot, but thankfully we do have a crew chief again this season. They don't start till mid-April, so I have to get all the cars, that's when I was talking to you, have to get all the cars built and ready and loaded to go to Knoxville for their season opener for the Outlaw Show, and then thankfully we'll have him starting in mid-April. So hopefully that'll alleviate some of those responsibilities, because it was like, way too much to be trying to like come off the track the last 2 years and then make the decisions and make the changes and then get back in the car and go back out. Like it was just